It's hard to imagine that Tom Homan can be as dumb as he looks, but apparently he is. What he said today, when asked about all the number of detainees who have no criminal record, is, well, that may be true, but he knows that they were probably planning to commit crimes at a later time, so he still has the right to lock them up. My God, the guy's a genius. Uh, just imagine anybody dumb enough to say something like that. Although I think the guy who's strongly in line for that is Representative Randy Fine in Florida, who has introduced what he calls the Thump Thump bill, which would give you the right to run over illegal immigrants, uh, uh, protesters, Antifa people. I guess you'd have to get out of the car to ask them who the hell they were, but to think that anybody would suggest giving people the right to run over people is just sort of amazing. But he was Trump's handpicked guy who he supported as a representative in the state of Florida. Boy, the stupidity reigns supreme. Meanwhile, uh, Trump has now admitted that he knew and knew of the young girl from his spa, Virginia Giuffre, who later committed suicide, who'd been taken from the Trump spa by Jeffrey Epstein and Giselle Maxwell. He didn't object to it on the basis of an underage young lady becoming a permanent masseuse for Jeffrey Epstein. And this was a young lady who recently and tragically committed suicide, but spoke out, had the courage to speak out about Epstein years ago. Trump's concerned that it was only that he was losing an employee, but for the first time, he has now admitted that he actually knew this young lady who ended up being groomed by Epstein and Maxwell. Meanwhile, another one of the Trump and MAGA acolytes was a religious singing leader, a fellow named Robert Tate, I think, who would sing and talk about abstinence and uh, sobriety and heterosexuality. Meanwhile, he was doing alcohol, cocaine, and sexually abusing men. Just the list keeps going on. There was a book I read. I'll find the title of it a couple months ago about some of the top religious leaders of these cults that have stolen money from people and been sexual predators, and it came out later on. So, under the guise of religion, uh, men have been attacking girls, women, and boys. The beat goes on for any type of cult group. Um, Meanwhile, the Department of Justice has fired top two antitrust lawyers, so that if you think combining companies might be bad and bad for business and bad for pricing, two of the top antitrust lawyers have been fired. Meanwhile, the senators, in a 50 to 49 vote, approved going to the Third Circuit a Trump lawyer named Emil Bovey, who was, when nobody else would, dismiss the criminal case against New York City Mayor Adams. Bovey stepped forward, he did it, and a whole bunch of the whole group, not a bunch, of the New York Assistant Attorney Generals quit in protest because they just dismissed a criminal case that they had against Adams. Bovey had no such ethical or moral compass to guide him. I think back to when actually a friend of mine, a man I held in great respect, Elliot Richardson, refused to follow Richard Nixon's orders and fire Archibald Cox from the Watergate investigation. There was a man who had morals and wisdom and judgment. Meanwhile, Bovey is also fired. Was the guy who fired a lot of the federal prosecutors who had proceeded on the January 6th insurrection in Washington. The insurrectionists were pardoned by Trump because he loves people who commit uh, random violence and rage against other people. But this didn't bother Bovee again. He dismissed the federal prosecutors, and finally people have said that Bovee had been quoted several times as saying, if a federal judge issues an order, just don't follow it. Who gives a damn? This is a guy who the Republicans have just put on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. I know, having been a lawyer and practicing law, most people don't like lawyers. Bovee's a good reason and a good example why people don't like lawyers. Uh, the Meanwhile, the let's talk about tariffs for a minute, because I think there's something that needs to be understood. When businesses pay a tariff, uh, what it means is there, one way or another, one or two things happen. Either they pass the tariff on in whole or in part to customers, so they pay a higher price, or the business absorbs it. If the business absorbs it, it means two things: that they have less money to invest, to do research, or to pay to their stockholders, which is one of their primary functions, or responsibilities is a better way to put that. But the other thing that happens is, let's assume that I am importing widgets to sell them, but there's now a tariff on them that would cost me $100 million. So instead of passing that on to my consumers, I pay it. But what happens is that's on a tax form basis, that's a deduction as part of the cost of goods sold. So the government, to the extent they're getting tax income from this, is not getting $100 million. What they're really getting is probably $73 million, because I think the highest corporate income tax rate is around 28%. So again, we are paying that one way or another, because the tax revenues are a lot less than the income from the tariffs. That's what's going on at the moment, and it just keeps continuing, keeps adding up, and it continues in its disgraceful ways.